language model. And I always say, yeah, of course I've heard of that, but I never have. I never have. So then I'll be Googling that in the background. I'll find some information about it. But yeah, the people that I surround myself with are the ones that actually keep up. That most of my business ideas actually come in my sleep. And then when you actually do the idea, it never works out to what you have in the business plan, right? Try to take the most conservative approach that you possibly can.
Entrepreneurs see the world differently. They don't just react to trends, they create them. But how do they think? What makes them different from everyone else? Well, today we're going to explore the entrepreneurial mindset with a 20-year veteran in startups and scale-ups. And watch to the end as Damon reveals the one big mistake all entrepreneurs make, himself included. So Damon, in your experience, how do entrepreneurs stay ahead of the curve with all the constant evolving landscape, new technologies coming out? How do they stay in front?
Well, I can only speak for myself in this. I've got, so the people that I work with, every week they'll say, oh, have you seen this came out? And have you seen that this came out? Like, Google just released a new language model. And I always say, yeah, of course I've heard of that, but I never have, right? I never have. So then I'll be Googling that in the background. I'll find some information about it. But yeah, the people that I surround myself with are the ones that actually keep up with the emerging tech, and then they inform me of it. Occasionally I'll come across something myself, but yeah, it's like I love the fact that the people that I work with are so across this new and emerging tech and understand it, and they're so excited by it that they come and present it to me. So that's how I stay across it. I would get your colleagues to even if you have like a personally I hate daily stand-ups and all that sort of thing, but once a month have a discussion around emerging technologies and I always find it fascinating.
Yeah, it sounds like, to what we said in the previous episode, having good people around you, that really helps with knowledge sharing and inspiring you as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Super. You did talk about management principle before, and I'm going to quote Peter Drucker here. And
Okay.
For those of you who don't know Peter Drucker, he is quite a influential or well-known figure in the business world, especially in management theory. And one of the quotes that he said that I remember to this day is, the whole purpose or the business definition of why a company exists is to create a customer. And so I'd love for you to help us understand, how did you identify what's worth pursuing as a business idea in line with maybe that quote? Or if you disagree, happy to.
No, I agree, and it occurred to me a few years ago that most of my business ideas actually come in my sleep, and like they sort of percolate when I'm in that sort of semi-conscious state when you've actually your mind switched off from the day to day, and then over a period of a few days I might forget about the idea, but some ideas I just cannot get out of my head. Like a week later I'll be thinking about it, a month later I'll be thinking about it. If I'm thinking about it 3 months later and maybe I've run the idea by a few people and they seem to like it, then I might actually start to investigate that idea. But yeah, like for me, the ideas just come in that sort of subconscious state. And yeah, I only really thought about that the other day, that most of the businesses that I've been involved in or started with, actually, the genesis was when I was half asleep. It's funny how the mind works, right?
Yeah, that's the tip for you guys. Get more sleep.
Yeah.
At the 8 to 10 hours as recommended, and you might have some business ideas. Okay, yeah, super fascinating. And I suppose once you've had that genesis of ideas and things like that, how do you go about validating and then pursuing it? Like, let's say you've had that idea that you've been mulling over for 3 months. Yeah, what happens next?
Well, in my field, in machine learning and data science, the first step is always like a straightforward one. You need to see what data exists out there to see how feasible your idea is, right? You might have the best idea in the world, but you'll never be able, the data doesn't exist, or you may not be able to collect the data. So that's the first step for me, is that I'll do a quick feasibility study, and I'll know in my head, because I've done so many machine learning and AI projects, that I'll know in my head what sort of resources would be involved, what sort of costs. I don't even have to write out a business plan on this at this early stage. I've got my own views on business plans, by the way. I reckon I've created like hundreds of business plans, and then when you actually do the idea, it never works out to what you have in the business plan, right? You try to take the most conservative approach that you possibly can, and it still never works out. So I don't know. I'm not saying not to do a business plan, but never rely on one. It just never works out the way you think. So once I've worked out whether something can technically be done, then and I have a rough idea how much it's going to cost, then I think to myself, do I really want to do this with all the other things that I'm doing at the moment? Because the worst thing you can do is spread your time across too many projects. You're too thinly spread, and nothing gets done well, right? You really struggle to deliver on anything, and I'm probably guilty of doing that, through my career, because you want to do all these good things, but then you've got to learn to prioritize. So, once it ticks those boxes, then I'll do a more detailed sort of business plan, and then see if it can be implemented.
Yeah, I think back to when I was in pharmaceutical marketing, my manager at the time told me, David, the key in marketing is saying no to 95% of initiatives, because there are going to be so many great ideas, but you can't do everything because we'll be spread too thin. You pick the 5% that are amazing ideas and go for that. And it sounds like quite similar to...
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I guess with the challenge of going into your own business and a startup is the uncertainty and the setbacks. How have you kept, the flame alive when you've had, venture capital knock back or investors pull out and things like that, or rejection? Yeah.
The first rule is that when someone says they're going to commit and put some money into a project, don't believe them. Right? Even if they sign documentation, don't believe them. Just once the money hits the account, then you can start believing. Right? That's the first. Like if you're trying to fund something and that's the first area you can go wrong, is you think you're going to get all this money in because people said they would put it. And it doesn't always come. So that's the first. As long as you understand that's the case, then you can sort of manage it. But it takes a bit of experience to understand that actually is a major setback early on. And then in terms of the project setbacks, once you're funded and up and running, you've got to set little achievable goals, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly. Otherwise, you can get so demoralized, especially if it's going to take you 6 months, a year, 2 years to get a product to market. You've got to set achievable goals and celebrate those goals as well. Celebrate them with your team, or celebrate them in some way. So I think that's how you sort of stay focused and motivated as you're building products. You can probably hear that buzzing in the background. That's my team member, one of my team members who's working on a clinical trial at the moment, giving me some feedback. I might turn that off, mute that.
The life of an entrepreneur is a million miles an hour. And I remember this quote: entrepreneurs are the crazy ones who would trade a 40-hour working week for an 80-hour working week. And I'm so grateful that Damon's made time to come onto the channel. So show us some support, guys. Hit like, hit subscribe. We really appreciate it. Building on that point, Damon. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. That's
all right.
I can't figure it out. If anyone out there knows how to mute Teams,
drop it in the comments.
All right, I'm signing out. I don't know if the world's going to explode if I'm signing out of Teams. All right, done.
Love it. And I suppose building on that, celebrating the small wins, I think that's super important. Any win should be celebrated. How about preventing burnout? Because I did allude to it can be quite long hours and things like that. Is it cricket? Is there something you've got advice that you turn to? A cup of coffee in the morning, meditation?
Not a coffee person. I think you've got to have a good work-life balance. If you're happy outside of work, it makes work a lot easier as well. So if you've got hobbies that you like to do. Make sure you keep pursuing those, even while you're developing things, because if you get too consumed into what you're doing on a work front, it's not great for mental health. And obviously, we're a lot more aware about these things now. I think just having a bit of balance is the key.
Yeah, that's so great to hear that. Even in the entrepreneurial world, that is that work-life balance, because that's something I think in corporate we don't do very well, if I'm being totally honest. Now, this also builds on the work-life balance piece around how have you as an entrepreneur balanced the long-term vision with the day-to-day grind of running a business?
Yeah, this is a really common mistake I see, and probably been guilty of myself, is you get so wrapped up in the day-to-day stuff that you don't actually think big picture. You might have this technical issue that you just cannot solve, and it's getting you down, but in the scheme of the overall product you're building in the big picture, it might only be a tiny bit, right? So the strategy that I use is, even if it's just myself, once a week or maybe once a month, I'll step back from the project, and I will try to look at the big picture. How are we progressing overall? What opportunities are there? But you've got to step back from the day to day. If you're running your own business and you're micromanaging, you're missing out on so many opportunities. And it's so common to micromanage, and you might not even know you're doing it. And I've been guilty of that. But you're missing out on so many opportunities for growth and for scale, and for ideas if you're micromanaging.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. And working on the business, not in the business. And I love that monthly.
Yeah, I mean it's a cliche, and particularly if you're a really early startup, you're going to work more on the business, right? But then you get to a certain point where you start having to employ more and more people, and you can get that scale and growth. You've got to transition, otherwise that's a real hurdle for growth.
Yeah, such a valuable insight, and I think success leaves clues. So take these valuable insights, guys, and if you're enjoying it, again, please give us a like, and it shows support for the channel and our guest, and we do really appreciate it. So as you can see, at the heart of entrepreneurship is a mindset, one that thrives on uncertainty and embraces failure. We haven't talked specifically about what Damon has built, but in his latest role as Chief Technology Officer at TrialKey, we do delve into this fascinating software that is going to change clinical trials forever. Click here to find out more.